I've cold plunged in a lot of different setups. The first time I cold plunged was in my bathtub with a few bags of ice, and I got the water to the mid 50s. Shortly after that, I upgraded to a trash can.
Oh my God, that's the coldest yet.
I've used pods with frozen water bottles to bring the water down to temperature. I've used pods with chillers. I DIY'd my own setup with a 150-gallon Rubbermaid stock tank and an industrial-grade water chiller. I've used inflatable tubs. I've cold plunged in Cambodia in a big concrete cylinder filled with ice. I even plunged in a few somewhat dicey converted freezer setups in Bali and Thailand, which I really don't recommend. And I gotta say that by far the Desert Plunge is my favorite setup and the best setup I've ever had. In this video, I'm gonna do a full review of this setup, which is the Desert Plunge Wide Grizzly 450 tub with the Active Aqua 1/4 horsepower chiller. I gotta disclose that they did send this to me for free, but no money exchanged hands for this video. I'm giving my honest review in exchange for the cold plunge. And as I've already talked this up a bit, you kind of already know by now that I'm pretty happy with it. It really is just a phenomenal setup. And I'm gonna go into all the details. I'll cover how shipping and delivery went. I'll cover unboxing the setup and my first impressions. I'm gonna also cover the process of setting up the chiller and the tub and all of that, and go into the details on how long that took me and some of the things that I noticed while I was setting it up. And since I've been using this cold plunge every day for about the last week or so, I'm gonna finish off the video by talking about how it's performed and how I like it so far. Let's get into it right now. Desert Plunge offers two cold plunge setups, the Exclusive and the Wide. The main difference between those is the cooler that they use for the tub. The Exclusive is gonna be a little bit longer and a little bit deeper, while the Wide is gonna be shorter in length, most noticeably at the bottom, but it's substantially wider than the Exclusive. The overall footprints are nearly the same, again with the Wide being a little bit wider, but the main differences between the two options does come down to the interior and exterior dimensions of the coolers themselves. If you want more details, go check out their website where you can find all this information. Other than that, all the hardware is pretty much the same. You got the same pump, you got the same plumbing, you've got the same chiller, and you have the same filter, and you also have the same options for add-ons, ozone generator, sanitation kit, and all the other accessories that they offer as well. So the big decision you'll be making is which cooler do you want to go with? I thought about it and I considered the Exclusive, but I went with the Wide. At the end of the day, it's kind of a preference thing, and you really can fit two people in this thing. After I decided which unit I wanted to go with, I put in my order, and shortly after that, I was contacted by customer support who sent me information on how the delivery would be handled. They don't use a big delivery service like UPS or FedEx or any of those. It was a smaller company, and that experience was awesome. They sent me a text message to set up the appointment for when I wanted it delivered. Since I am in Las Vegas and Desert Plunge is based out of Mesa, Arizona, the distance between us wasn't too far, so I actually could have received this the next day, which is insane because the thing weighed 250 pounds. At least that's what it said on the shipment information. And I was not expecting it to come that quickly. Again, this is totally based off of proximity to Mesa, Arizona, because that's where they ship out of. So keep that in mind. If you're further from them, it'll probably take a little bit longer, but they do estimate that shipping would take 5 to 7 business days, and you can pick it up if you live near Mesa, Arizona. So something that I will say, that if you are ordering the Desert Plunge setup, make sure that you're prepared for a large package. I was prepared and I had a spot in my garage for it. I was a little too optimistic, hoping that I would be able to get it into my backyard as it was delivered, and that wasn't the case because my house is, one of these cookie cutter houses in the suburbs, and the side gate wasn't big enough, so I had to receive it and then unbox it in my garage and then move it into my backyard after I unloaded all the things out of it. But it came packaged very nicely. It was wrapped up on a pallet and there were no scratches, no dings, no scrapes, no nothing. It was very well taken care of for the whole delivery process. And I gotta say that all of that was really good. I was super happy with how that went. Definitely a 10 out of 10 on shipping and delivery. So I wanna talk about unboxing it, and my immediate first impressions. Everything was packed neatly inside the cooler and there was room to spare in that thing. It had the Active Aqua 1/4 horsepower chiller that comes with this setup. A separate box in the cooler. It came with all the parts and everything for the actual setup. In that box, there was a filter, there was the pump, there was all the plumbing and miscellaneous parts. One cool thing that they throw in is an RV water filter so that you can filter your water when you fill your Plunge. I also received the Sorona water treatment and sanitation kit that they provide, which was an extra nice thing to receive with it. And I highly suggest that you pick that up as well. Balancing and sanitizing your water can be a real pain sometimes. And this kit just takes all the guesswork out of it and is everything you need to get it dialed in. And they also include a few extra filters with that setup as well. I'll say one of the things that stood out to me right away, besides how big the Grizzly cooler was the quality of all the parts and the ruggedness of everything. The Grizzly is a beast. They chose a really good product for their tank. Other products use those inflatable tubs. Some of the higher end brands use those plastic fiberglass tubs that they make custom for that. This cooler is like the perfect thing to use for a cold plunge. If you have really little kids, I will say that the tabs that you pull are pretty secured, but if you're like really nervous and you want to keep your kids out of it, you could just put a lock on it. It's super easy. They have like a locking latch so that when you open it, you can lock it in place, and it has 2 settings where you can have it pretty much all the way open, and then you can have it almost all the way open with a little bit of angle to it. But I thought that was really nice because the first time I got in it, I read the warning that's like, be careful, don't lock any kids or pets in here because they will suffocate. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to be getting in this thing with freezing cold water. But that latch is super safe and I have nothing to worry about. But it's like these little extra features that is built into this cooler that makes it great for a cold plunge setup that was immediately noticeable. And not to mention that it has a great lid that's built into the cooler, and it's heavily insulated so it keeps the water extra cold, which I'll talk about later in the video. You could just buy the cooler itself. Through Desert Plunge, they sell a chiller ready cooler that just has the holes pre-drilled and ready to go for a DIY setup. But I can guarantee you that you will not DIY a better setup than the setup that they sell as a complete product. And it's just totally worth not having to think about all of that stuff that you would have to do when you were DIYing this, and just having a nice plug and play solution that has obviously been thoroughly thought through and has all the things that you'll need to have a solid, nice cold plunge setup. And it's not just a cooler that's high quality. I immediately noticed just how heavy duty everything felt that came with this setup. The pump, when I picked up the pump, I was like, man, this thing is heavy. Like, it felt rock solid. The plumbing and the fittings were heavy duty. They used the GE home filter that I used in a previous DIY setup, but it was already ready to go. The cartridge was already in it, and the mounting bracket was already attached. I didn't have to put that thing together. It was ready to go, and that was how everything else came packaged in this setup. And I will say that Active Aqua is one of the better brand names in water chillers. Most of the other chillers out there on the market, these companies that come up and start making cold plunges, are all just using the same chiller manufacturer, and they just slap their logo on it. I believe that Desert Plunge chose to go with Active Aqua because it's an established brand that makes good equipment. Everything is so perfectly put together. It fits all super nicely. Power box that's already attached. They have a little mount for your pump. They have your filter area mounted already. It really feels that Desert Plunge took a lot of time thinking up and combining the best parts possible to build like the perfect cold plunge setup. I don't want this video to sound like an ad. I'm just super happy with it. It's really, really good. Let's get into the setup process. I kind of talked about how big this thing was. It was 104 pounds empty, just the cooler on its own. That's not including the chiller and all the other equipment that came with it. And it's not like a bad thing. It's just something that you need to keep in mind. Moving it was a challenge. Like I said, I had to empty it and unbox it in my garage. And then I had to get it through the side door, and I had to like get it up on its side and wiggle it around and slide it around, and then finally like get it to where I needed it, and then drug it through the yard. And I have a smaller backyard, again, cookie cutter suburban house in Vegas. It was still a little bit of a challenge, and my wife wasn't here, so I didn't really have anybody I could call to help me with it. I could totally manage this. It's just gonna be a little bit of work. So keep that in mind. For this setup, the most work you're gonna do is having to move this thing and get it to where you want it. Other than that, the setup was super simple. It comes with a few QR codes for videos to help you set it up. There's videos for how to drain it and videos for other things that they provide through their YouTube channel and their website. I believe it's the founder and the owner of Desert Plunge that walks you through the setup. All the parts are numbered and labeled, and everything's well packaged, and there's not a whole bunch of parts. So it's really super simple. I would say that the setup part of the video is about 15 minutes long, and that is really how long it's gonna take you. I just watched the video and put everything together. I needed a Phillips screwdriver. That was the only tool I needed, and it was to attach the plate that the pump sits on and to tighten the screws for the filter. That's it. 4 screws, that's all I had to do. Everything else was hand tightened and super simple to set up. The 15-minute process. It took longer to fill it with water than it did to attach all the parts. There's always some assembly required, but they took out as much of that extra work as possible to make this process of setting it up super simple. And I really appreciate that. Once it was filled with water and I filled everything up, there were no leaks. That's how you know that there was a lot of thought put into how everything connects, and the parts that they use were quality. No leaks is always a good thing, because it's such a pain when you get all set up and you think you're ready to go and you put water in the thing and it starts leaking, and you got to start wrapping plumber's tape on stuff or taking things apart and making sure that things are seated correctly. This build is quality, and you can tell by how nicely everything just fits together. The footprint of everything is cut to the perfect size. In other setups that I've had in the past, not just my DIY setups, but setups that I have purchased, you always got like extra hose hanging around, or you got like too much slack on one end of the hose, or there's a filter that sits awkwardly on the side of something, or like that little pod setup that I had. The hose and the filter or the skimmer is all connected to the chiller, and there's multiple pieces that just kind of hang around. And this doesn't have that. Everything just fits nice, it's clean, very nice setup, super easy to put together. Something else that goes back to mentioning the quality of the equipment. This pump is a solid pump. I hooked up that RV filter that came with it to my hose, and I pushed that thing to push water through the chiller and into the filter. The filter filled up with water nicely, and once I had enough water in it and I fired this thing up, I was like, oh man, this pump is high quality. You can tell that a pump is high quality by the water pressure and the fact that it's giving out that water pressure as it's pushing through a chiller and a filter. And it's just because it's a quality pump. Something else about setup, once I got water in the thing and I was ready to go, the water was 71, I think it's what the chiller read after I got it going. It's usually recommended when you put fresh water to throw a few bags of ice in there so that your chiller doesn't work as hard and you get the water down faster. As a little experiment, and out of laziness to not wanting to go get ice, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna run this and see if overnight this thing will be down to 40 degrees. When I woke up in the morning, I was kind of surprised. And this was something that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. When I came out, I didn't hear the chiller going. I can hear the pump going, but I didn't hear the chiller going. And that made me worried because I'm very used to the chillers kind of running all the time. Because of having tanks and tubs that aren't very well insulated, it's kind of always fighting to keep it at the temperature that you set it, because the coolness dissipates and the heat from the outside is kind of bringing the water up in temperature, and the chiller's trying to bring the water down in temperature, and it's constantly fighting because a lot of these other setups don't have good insulated tubs. When I went outside, being so used to my previous setup that I was using and having the chiller just running 24/7, I was like, oh crap, I broke the chiller. It must have like burned out overnight. But then I was like, no, wait a minute. Like this thing should not break like that. And it was because the cooler keeps the water cold and the chiller doesn't have to run all the time. It brings it down to the temperature, and then when it finally gets to like the 2 or 3 degrees over the temperature that you set it to, the chiller will automatically kick in. Since the Grizzly cooler is so good at keeping stuff cold, the chiller didn't have to work so hard. And that morning at 8 a.m., I took my first plunge in this setup, and it was great, and it was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. I did talk about this a little bit early on, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. The idea behind using a cooler for your tank is such a genius idea. That's one of my favorite things about this. I think the cooler looks awesome. It keeps the water cold. The lid, apart from the safety features, it does a great job of keeping the water cold and keeping the water clean, which are like the 2 most important things you want to do. The fact that the cooler has 2 drain slots, how that's set up is really nice as well. So you can drain it from 2 different spots. Again, they provide videos on how you can properly drain this. They also include a little plug that you could use to plug in the aftermarket slot that they put in. They provide the original drain cover for the side that has the adapter to connect to the chiller and the filter and the pump. So you could essentially use this thing as a cooler if you wanted to. And I just like how it all just works and looks good too. So a few things, final thoughts after using it for the last week every day. I am glad that I went with the wide and not the exclusive, just because I enjoy having the extra room. I think it suits my needs better. I think that the exclusive would have worked just fine, but I do like having the extra space of the wide. That's one thing. When I kind of dunk and get my head under and I sit in there, I kind of like to cross my legs because I like to make sure my knees are under. I like to make sure my neck's under. I like to dunk my head when I go in, and the wide gives me all the room that I need. And if I can ever convince my wife to get in there, I bet that we can both fit in there and freeze our asses off together. Something else that I noticed, which I kind of talked about with the lid and all that, it's clean. It's cleaner than my previous setup. I do believe that this has to do with the Sirona care package that they sent, because I did get the water perfectly balanced. I threw in the sanitizer, I threw in the hydrogen peroxide. I'm glad that I took the time to get the water just right, got the alkaline and the pH right where it was supposed to be, used their sanitation product, used their hydrogen peroxide, and this thing has been clean. The filter has also been putting in a lot of work. I was surprised to see how much stuff the filter has caught over the last week. Considering that I get in the ice bath first thing in the morning or after a shower, I never get in there dirty or sweaty, but it's clearly visible that the filter has been picking up whatever is coming off of my body when I get in that thing. After a week, the water is crystal clear and looks like it did the day I filled it up for the first time. Also, I mentioned with the chiller not running as often, it wasn't just that first day. Most mornings, since it's the cooler time of the day, and the thing has been running overnight and it's cooler overnight, when I come out in the morning, the chiller isn't running. It's on, but it's not running. It's sitting at 40 degrees, or sometimes it might be closer to 41, which makes me think that it might be ready to kick in if it hits like 42, but the chiller hardly runs. The fact that the cooler keeps the water colder is something that's going to end up saving me money in the long run. And it'll add up because I have this thing on all the time. I use it every day. And that's just something that I've noticed, which again, is something I want to mention that I like about this and have noticed after using it for a week. And it's just cold. It works, right? At the end of the day, the things you want when you're looking to invest in a good cold plunge setup is how easy is it to set up? Is it low maintenance? Is it easy to clean, or is it going to keep your water clean without you having to do a bunch of work? And is it going to keep your water cold? I can tell you that this setup, for the price and the value that you're getting, is totally worth it. I honestly wish I would have got one of these sooner, and I have found my favorite setup. I will be cold plunging in this forever because I'm pretty sure that cooler will last forever. They give you a 1-year limited warranty, and even have options for extended warranty. So any of the other parts that might go out on this thing, they'll cover for you. Again, I'm not trying to make this a big sales pitch. I just really like this setup. I'm super happy that Desert Plunge reached out to me and decided to send me one of these. I'll make sure to provide a link down below that you can use if you decide to get one of these setups. Totally worth it, and you should definitely check it out. With all that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.